To find the missing side of a right triangle, if you have two sides of a right triangle, to find the third, you could just use the Pythagorean theorem. That's not what's happening in here. We're missing more than one side, so Pythagorean theorem won't work. We only have the length of one side. But we also have the length of an angle. We have the length of a side is 5, and the length of an angle is 37. So we have one side and one angle, and from that, we can find the length of another side. So we're going to create a trig equation using sine, cosine, and tangent. If you remember, trig equations are all set up as a function, sine, cosine, or tangent, an angle, and that's equal to a ratio. And usually from there we have some help from our calculators. But we need to set up this trig equation. The first thing you want to start is determine the angle you're using for perspective. In this case, we're going to use the angle we're given, 37 degrees. And then label your sides from that angle's perspective, opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse. X is opposite that angle, 5 is the hypotenuse. And so you have to determine the proper trig function, sine, cosine, or tangent. Which function uses opposite and hypotenuse? For this one, sine. Sine uses those two sides. So sine is the function. The angle we're using is 37, and that's equal to the ratio from sine is opposite over hypotenuse, x over 5. So that's our trig equation. Function angle equals ratio. Sine 37 equals x over 5. Now at this point, I'm not ready for my calculator. I don't use the second key. That's only for finding angles. At this point, I need to get x alone. And the way I can do that is if I put sine 37 over 1, I see I have a proportion, and I can cross multiply. So I'm going to do 5 times sine 37, and I write it as 5 sine 37. I can't multiply the 5 and the 37 because it's 5 times the function of sine 37, so it just kind of goes in the front, but we know it's 5 times sine 37, and x times 1 is x. And so x is alone, 5 times sine 37. My calculator can do that for me, so I just type 5 times sine 37, close the parentheses, enter, and round to whatever we need to round to. This time we're going to round to the nearest whole number, so it's 3. So the length of side x is 3 units. Let's try our second example over here. The angle we're going to use for perspective is 45. From that perspective, the opposite side is missing. X is the hypotenuse, and rad 2 is adjacent. So what function uses these two? Cosine. Cosine uses adjacent and hypotenuse. So function is cosine. The angle is 45 because it's all going to set up as function angle equals ratio. Adjacent over hypotenuse would be rad 2 over x. Put cos 45 over 1. Cross multiply. X times cos 45 is written as x cos 45. And 1 times rad 2 is just rad 2. Now x isn't alone here because this is x times cos 45. And we know to get rid of x times something, we have to divide by cos 45. Divided by cos 45. And this is what I'm going to type into my calculator. Rad 2 divided by cos 45. So pull up my calculator. Let me clear out all that. Let's do radical 2 divided by cos 45. Close the parentheses after that. And we get the side as length 2 units. If it were a decimal, I would round, depending on what the problem asked for.